Hello, sixth grade. My name is Mrs. Simcoe. If you're watching this video, I'm going to be your intervention specialist for this year. So one of the ways that we are going to be doing our crunches and any tests that we may have is I'm going to record myself like I'm doing now, reading out loud any of the passages or questions and the multiple choice answers. So you can go back, rewatch them at any time. You can listen to the story as many times as you want, and you can rewind to hear the questions again. So at the end of this video, if there's any feedback, if you would like, if the quality wasn't good, or if it was choppy, or if something wasn't working for you, please let me know, and we can figure out how to work this out together so that we can make an easy go at taking our tests. So your first crunch is going to be an ELA crunch. And I'm going to go ahead and read the passage. It is called The Phone Call. Paul looked out the window and sighed. The driveway was still empty and it was getting dark. He checked the clock and sighed again, deeper this time. His dad had said that he would pick him up by 5:30, but it was almost 7 and Paul hadn't heard a word from him. He walked up the stairs to his room and put away his baseball glove. Paul figured that even if his dad did miraculously show, it wouldn't be much fun playing catch in the dark. Paul sat down on the couch and tried to do some of his reading homework, but he couldn't get his dad off his mind. The phone rang at about 8, and Paul let it go to the machine. It was his dad. "Hey, Paul, I'm so sorry that I couldn't make it tonight. I had to finish up a big project at work. Maybe we can catch a baseball game this weekend." "Oh, wait, this weekend's no good. How about next weekend? That should work. You and I are going to the stadium for sure, Paulie. I hope all is well." Paul listened to the machine in disgust. He knew that his dad had a job and a life, but he couldn't understand why he was always flaking out on him. Paul thought to himself, couldn't someone else get one of these bad news speeches once in a while? Why does it always have to be me? Paul crashed on the couch with his book opened to the first page and fell asleep. The next day at school, Paul didn't turn in his math or science homework, and he failed a pop quiz in reading class. Paul's homeroom teacher, Mr. Matthews, noticed Paul's uncharacteristically poor performance and asked him to stay after class. Paul sort of murmured a response that sounded like okay. When the bell rang, the other children filed out of class. Paul huffed and waited with his head on his desk. Mr. Matthews pulled up a chair next to him. "What's up, Paul? You're not doing your homework. You're not studying for tests, and this isn't like you. Something must be bothering you. What is it?" Paul didn't want to tell him. He knew that if he started talking, a flood of emotions would pour out of him. He just wanted to be alone with his pain, so he sat there quietly, not even looking at Mr. Matthews. "Well, Paul, if you don't want to talk, I will. I know that something's bothering you and you've got to get it out. You don't need to tell me, but you need to tell someone or this thing is going to eat you up. Paul, you've got to feel your best to do your best. The sooner you get this thing off your chest, the sooner you can heal." As Paul walked home from school, he reflected on the things Mr. Matthews had told him. He knew that he hadn't been himself recently. Maybe he stopped doing his work because he was looking for attention from his father. He hadn't really thought about it too much up until now, but as he walked home that night, he realized that he wasn't just letting his dad spoil his plans, he was letting him spoil his life. Paul figured that Mr. Matthews was right. He couldn't do his best until he felt his best. He decided to take his advice and talk to someone about it. That night, when Paul got home from school, he called his dad. The call went to voicemail after ringing 7 or 8 times. Paul had heard his dad's answering machine message more times than he cared to remember. But this time, things were different. When it ended, he would say what he really felt. When the phone beeped, Paul began talking. "Dad, it's Paul. I can't go to the stadium with you next weekend. I've got a lot of homework to catch up on. Also, I don't really want to spend another day looking out the window and waiting. When you break plans with me, Dad, it hurts me, and I'm sick of getting hurt. It's not too late to rebuild a relationship, but you're gonna have to start small. Maybe you can help me with my homework sometime or something. Dad, I love you, but that's how I feel. As Paul ended the call, he felt as though a tremendous burden has been lifted off his shoulders. He didn't know whether his dad would change. He didn't even think that he would, but it didn't matter. Paul had changed. He had expressed his feelings to the right person, rather than just bottling them up inside of himself, and he had a clear head as he worked through his assignments that night. Okay, that's the end of the passage. We're going to start with the questions. Answer the following questions from what you have read. Number 1. What is the author's purpose for writing this passage? A, entertain. B, inform. C, teach. D, persuade. Number 2. Identify one detail that could be part of the resolution. A, he couldn't do his best until he felt his best. He decided to take his advice and talk to someone about it. B, as Paul ended the call, he felt as though a tremendous burden had been lifted off of his shoulders. C, he knew that his dad had a job and a life, but he couldn't understand why he was always flaking out on him. D, Paul sat down on the couch and tried to do some of his reading homework, but he couldn't get his dad off his mind. Number 3, this is a 2-part question. Part A, what is the setting of the passage? A, the kitchen at Paul's mother's home. B, the bedroom at Paul's mother's home. C, the kitchen at Paul's father's home. Or D, the bedroom at Paul's father's home. Part B, what paragraph from the passage supports this answer? A, paragraph 1. B, paragraph 2. C, paragraph 3. Or D, paragraph 4. Number 4, this is also a 2-part question. Part A, how does Paul feel after leaving the message? A, Paul feels mad. B, Paul feels sad. C, Paul feels happy. Or D, Paul feels relieved. Part B, what paragraph from the passage supports your answer to part A? Is it A, paragraph 5, B, paragraph 6, C, paragraph 7, or D, paragraph 8? Okay, that concludes the multiple choice questions. If you need something read again, just go ahead and rewind the video to the part that you need read again, or if you want to listen to the story again before we do our extended response questions, feel free. Number 5, your first ERQ. Identify the climax of the passage. Support your answer using 2 details from the passage. So remember, you're going to need a DWB and then answer your question. I'll read it one more time. Identify the climax of the passage. Support your answer using 2 details from the passage. And it doesn't have to be very long, maybe just about a paragraph. And number 6, create a thesis statement to prove how your life could be compared to Paul's life. In an essay, support your thesis statement with at least 3 details from the passage. I'm going to read that one more time. Create a thesis statement to prove how your life could be compared to Paul's life. In an essay, support your thesis statement with at least 3 details from the passage. Now remember, an essay is multi-paragraph. So I want you to do your best to get more than 1 paragraph out of this. You're comparing how your life could be compared to Paul's life. And I'm going to need 3 details from the story. You can go back and listen to the story or reread it on your own. I'm going to need 3 details. So for this one, as you can see, you have the front box and the back box. So you have quite a bit more space for this one, so more than 1 paragraph is required. Okay, do your best, and I look forward to reading your responses. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or text me using the Google Voice number.